Hello, everyone. How are you guys doing today? I hope you guys are all having a great day, a great week, a great weekend, whatever day it is that you are tuning in. If you are new here, welcome. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. I hope that you find it informative. I hope that you enjoy it, like it, learn something from it. And if you do, please go ahead and hit that like button so that other people know that this is a video that they may enjoy if they're interested in the Watts case. And if you really like it, if you would be so kind to just hit that subscribe button, I would really appreciate it. I have noticed that 75% of my regular viewers are not even subscribed. So if you would please just hit that subscribe button, it would help me out so much. If not, that's fine too. But just remember, just because you subscribe does not mean that you can't unsubscribe at any time. To all of my subscribers, thank you guys so much. I have watched my numbers climb in the last month or two, and I am just ecstatic. You have no idea. The comments that I'm getting are so amazing, and it makes me want to keep going, and it makes everything worth it. I had to pull this video back. It was scheduled to air on today. If you're watching this on Halloween of 2024, it was supposed to air today, and I just had to pull it back because I have to give a thank you shout out to Zawoki. And if you don't know who he is, I'm going to put his channel right here so you can go over there and check out his videos. He's actually been covering this case for much longer than I have been. He asked me if he could do commentary on my Watts videos. So I know a lot of you guys are here because of him. So I definitely needed to shout out Zawoki in particular for helping me grow my channel and also for giving me an invitation to collab. So I did just want to say thank you to everyone who came here from Zawoki's channel, and obviously thank you to Zawoki himself. All right, so now I'm going to add this into my video, and then I'm going to go upload it so that it still makes it out before 6 p.m. on Halloween. I'm going to try to stick to my goals. Okay, let's do this. So the purpose of this video is to take a closer look at these images as well as the timestamps and logistics of the area in order to determine to our best ability whether or not there were car lights directly in front of the Watts home on the night of August 12, 2018, any of the times that Nate's CCTV caught them, or if these cars were just turning down Steeple Rock Drive. I'm going to do the best that I can with the information that I have found. Keep in mind, I am not any kind of professional when it comes to analyzing CCTV footage, and my only familiarity with the area in question is from Google Maps and Google Earth, okay? I've never been to the area. As always, this video is my opinion on the images and information that I have. It is entirely up to you to do your own research and to form your own opinion. So in my last video, part 3, episode 3, some new things came up in the timeline that have me questioning even more about whether or not someone else may have been at the Watts home on the night of August 12th and or early morning hours of August 13th. I wanted to take a short break from the timeline to look more into these images and see if we can make sense of them, because I know I'm not the only one who has these questions. I do want to be clear. This is not going to be a video that goes into all of Nate's CCTV footage or whether or not his footage was manufactured by the police. That would be an entirely other video looking at completely different footage. In the last video, I showed 5 total images of car lights outside the Watts home over the course of the weekend, Saturday and Sunday evenings, all of which occurred while Nikki was on the phone with Chris and or directly following the call between Nikki and Chris ending. In this video, I'm only going to be looking at those 3 images from Sunday night. While I am interested in the Saturday ones as well, it's the Sunday ones that I feel are the most important if we're trying to figure out if Nikki was physically there at the Watts home before, during, or immediately following the murders. Again, this is just looking at those 3 other CCTV captures, specifically on the 12th of August, before Shanann would have gotten home from Arizona. Okay, so let's do this. On August 12th, 2018 at 9:28 p.m., Chris Watts calls Nicole Kessinger. This call would last 111 minutes, meaning that the call ended at 11:19 p.m. During Nikki's interview with Detective Kobach, she would say that she didn't remember anything specific about that phone call. The only two things that stood out to her were, one, the TV was on in the background, and two, Chris told her that he would be going straight out to the field the next morning rather than stopping at the office first. It would appear that the TV being on was far more troubling to Nikki than him going to the field, and she even says that while it stood out that he would not be going to the Anadarko office first, it was certainly not uncommon for those guys to go straight to a location on many of the mornings. Nikki said she noticed the TV being on towards the end of their conversation. She said that usually Chris would talk to her while he was in the basement where there was no TV, and that she found it strange that he was not in the basement. And she even suspected that Chris may have been up in the master bedroom waiting for Shanann to get home. I said in my last video that I had the opinion that Nikki remembered this because it made her upset. I believe I said, I think it irked her that Chris was in the master bedroom, the bedroom that he shared with his wife. And I do wonder if that caused an argument towards the end of that conversation. Either way, that's what we heard from Nikki herself.
So I didn't know what room he was in, but I was just like, I just thought it was weird. Because he's always like, before I go to bed and I lay down, he's always like kind of trying to do the same thing. We just talk. It's like a really chill thing till one of us is about to pass out. And then that's like the end of it. But it was strange because I was like, the TV's on. I remember I was thinking, I was like, maybe he's waiting up for her. And then I was like, maybe not. I didn't know. It wasn't something that like alerted me. It was just different from his standard operating procedure.
So anything important that you recall during that conversation about the children, about his wife, about what he was doing the next day, what he had planned, anything like that? No. Did he tell you any of that information?
I remember he told me he had to go to the field and not to the office on Monday morning. Well, he told me, he said, I got to go to a site. I got to go check out like a valve or something where they think that they had a release. Something like that. Yeah. He's like, so I won't see you. I'm going to the field, which is not an uncommon thing for the ops guys to like just go straight to the field. Like it happens. Like typically they go to the office, I would say like 3 or 4 days a week, but there are days where him and his other team members are not there. I mean, it wasn't something, I mean, and it's not just him, it's like that whole team. Like you can just tell when they've got like a lot going on because I'll walk in and there'll be like 2 of them as opposed to like 6 or 7.
Now, I also said that when Chris called Nikki at 9:28 p.m. that the call registered in Thornton. This is the area where Nikki lived, and her phone registers there often. Nikki's true town of residence was North Glen, but being a very small town with less towers and lower bandwidth, her calls mainly register in Thornton when she's at home. In fact, all of the times she said she was at home, her calls either registered in Thornton or North Glen, but mainly Thornton. But I also said that just because she was in Thornton when that call came in doesn't mean that she stayed in Thornton. She could have gone anywhere, and the only way we would know where she ended up would be by another phone call in or out on Nikki's phone. Now, I said we, as in the general public. Detective Kobach was talking about a warrant for Nikki's phone pings, in addition to her call logs, which were 2 separate things to ask for, requiring 2 separate warrants. Now, she gave her call history, aka her call logs, but when Kobach mentioned that he was going to be getting a warrant for her phone records, she asked him what anyone would ask, isn't that what you just did? And he says, no, I'm talking about your location.
Did they ask for consent to get cell phone records? That'll probably be done by warrant. If we wanted,
what you just did?
Nope. What I'm talking about is your movement.
Oh.
By GPS or by cell phone tower to show where you were. Obviously, we want to know where you were that day too. You're dating a man who did some egregious stuff, and we want to show that you were never near him that day. That was something we will have to get a warrant for, anyways. I'm just saying, if we asked for it, would you have any objections to that?
No, you can have
right.
it. I'm a pretty boring person.
Well, it sounds like you just went to work that day, and then you came home, and you were there at 3:45.
Yeah, like give or take like 5 minutes.
So where her phone was pinging, even when she wasn't using it. This never ended up happening though, as we all know. So the next phone ping that we have is on Nikki's Verizon call log. And this call was an outgoing call from Nikki to Jim, and it was made at 6:16 a.m. and it registered in Frederick. This has everyone, including me, questioning the coincidence of Nikki's phone pinging in Frederick, Colorado on the very morning of the murders. The reason for this is that her phone only ever pinged in Frederick when she was admittedly at the Watts house or in Frederick. There were 4 total phone pings in Frederick listed on Nicole Kessinger's call logs that were given. One was on July 14th. That's when they had that argument. Dieter led Nikki up the stairs and Nicole saw the family that she was basically destroying. And she felt that and she wasn't happy about it. And she ended up leaving and sitting out in her truck. Chris eventually talked her into coming back into the home, and allegedly they resolved that issue, but Nikki did take a step back after that, and the phone logs reflect that. She and Chris did not talk for a few days after that July 14th argument. The other ping was when Nikki allegedly picked up some touch-up paint for her Toyota 4Runner in Frederick. This was on July 18th, and there were 2 pings, actually. The first one was at 4:34 p.m. when Nikki left a voicemail for Chris, and the second is just 6 minutes later when Chris calls her back at 4:40 p.m. Now, on July 16th, we have the search by Chris for Toyota dealership. We also know he was looking up touch-up paint for a Toyota, so Nikki has a white Toyota 4Runner, and they happen to have a Toyota dealership right there in Frederick. We can see that Nikki did not stay in Frederick because the next phone call she makes, she is in Broomfield. So she is moving. She didn't stay there. I don't think she was at the Watts house. I think she was more likely at the dealership, that, or she just swung by the Watts residence, picked up the touch-up paint, and went home. That's just my opinion, but that's what the pings are suggesting. That leads us to that one final ping from Nikki's phone that registered in Frederick, and that was on the morning of August 13th at 6:16 a.m., the morning of the murders, just after Chris left for Survey 319. That again is a whole different video entirely on phone pings, which we will get into, but What's the Obsession has a ton of information and videos on those phone pings if you want to check them out. Before I get into them more in depth. But I'm telling you right now, I'd be using one of her videos to go into it. I did find other things and other visuals to use and things like that, but she's the one who actually talked to someone who knows all about phone pings and analyzed Nikki's call history. And Kelly and this guy, I don't remember his name, they pretty much debunked the idea that Nikki logistically would have ever registered in Frederick unless she was in the Watts neighborhood. Like, that's how close the tower she pinged off of was. I'll try to remember to link that specific video in the description box below. Okay, now first let's look at the location of the Watts home and Nate's home, as well as the locations of Nate's security camera. This is the Google Maps view, and I also have the Google Earth view, which is what I'll be mostly using throughout this video. But just to give an easier visual at first, here you can see the Watts home on Saratoga Trail. The home directly next door to the right is Nate's home, and the house directly to the left is Betty's home. Betty's the neighbor who left her house to go work out at 5:15 a.m. on the morning of August 13th, and we can see her car lights on Nate's CCTV, and we can see that she turned left down Steeple Rock Drive at about 5:15 a.m. Betty told officers that she did this every weekday morning at the same time. Now let's get back to these still images. When I looked further into where these images came from, I realized that they came from the body cam footage of Officer Coonrod while at Nate TRINASTICH'S home. They are all on his CCTV library, as you can see here. There are other images that others have talked about being questionable, such as a white van and a red car, but we're only going to be going into the images of the car lights in this video. Because honestly, there were a lot of white vans around. There was construction going on behind the house, and how many people have a red car? So I feel like that's so much of a needle in a haystack at this point. We're just going to look at the car lights. This first still shot we have is timestamped 9:37 p.m., which is just 9 minutes after the phone call between Chris and Nikki began. Now, during that 111-minute phone call, there would be some vehicle activity outside the Watts home. But being that the call registered in Thornton at 9:28 p.m., it's unlikely that the car lights at 9:37 p.m. are Nikki. And let me show you why, for those of you who don't already know. There are two main routes that Google would give you from Thornton to the Watts home, and both are about the same mileage and take about the same time to travel, given the time of day and traffic. The first route given is about 24 minutes, and the second route given is about 28. Could it be possible to get there faster? Absolutely, of course, especially at certain times, like late night or early morning, for example. That being said, I still don't think that you could make it there in 9 minutes. Now let's quickly look a bit closer at the Google Maps directions from where Nikki allegedly lived all the way to the Watts home. Specifically, the ways to enter and exit the Watts neighborhood. Bear in mind that back in 2018, there was a lot of construction in the Watts neighborhood. These current maps are different, and I unfortunately just started researching this case this year, so I will try to do my best to make sure that I'm accurate with what it would have been like back in 2018. It looks as though there is still only one way in and one way out of the Watts neighborhood that makes sense if you're specifically going to the Watts house, especially if you're coming from North Glen or Thornton, and that would be off of Aggregate Boulevard, aka Highway 7. In order to enter the neighborhood, you have to go through a roundabout and exit onto Windham Hill Parkway. To get to the Watts home, you would make a right onto Steeple Rock Drive, and from there, you could either go straight all the way to their house, or you could turn left onto Saratoga Trail and follow it around to the home. Google Maps suggests the Saratoga route, but common sense would tell most of us to just stay on Steeple Rock and be able to pull directly in front of 2825 and be on the right side of the road. Looking at the map today, there is another way out of the neighborhood. I don't know if it was always there. If someone knows whether or not this was a way in or out back in 2018, let me know. Actually, better yet, if anyone has a map of the area from August 2018, like from Google Maps, maybe those of you who followed the case from the beginning may know where I could find someone with that info. Just to know, because we need to know the ins and outs of the neighborhood. Either way, I don't want to leave it out. So the other way out of the Watts neighborhood is by following Saratoga Trail west and then north and make a right onto Sterling Court. From Sterling Court, you could either make a right on Marble Mill Place or just a tad farther west onto Black Mesa Road. Then you would make a right onto Billings Avenue, follow Billings Avenue all the way down to Route 52. Ideally, one would take I-25 to Route 52 to Highway 7, or Highway 7 the entire way if you were coming from Thornton or North Glen. Again, I'm not at all familiar with this area. I'm trying really hard not to confuse you guys, and in turn, I think I'm confusing the absolute shit out of myself right now while making this video. But what I'm trying to point out is there is really only one way in and one way out of the neighborhood that makes any kind of sense for Nikki to have taken. And that would be the main entrance to the subdivision on Aggregate Boulevard and Windham Hill Parkway. It would also logistically make more sense to continue down Steeple Rock Drive straight to the Watts home rather than to go around Saratoga Trail this way, where you would end up on the opposite side of the street from the house. Unless you wanted to be more inconspicuous, I suppose you would take one of these other routes, but typically this is a straight shot. I don't see why you wouldn't use this way. The Watts home is directly at the end of the intersection of Steeple Rock and Saratoga Trail, as is Betty's house. Now this means that at night they likely get a lot of headlights from vehicles shining directly into their homes, especially the Watts. Nate's cameras are triggered by these car lights, and thus we have these images of car lights throughout this 111-minute phone call. So really, these lights could just be cars traveling east on Saratoga Trail and turning north onto Steeple Rock Drive in order to leave the neighborhood, or really any reason. The first thing I took into consideration is the likelihood of traffic using Steeple Rock Drive. It is not the only way to Windham Hill. Just 2 houses to the west of Steeple Rock Drive is Ruby Hill Drive. And I would think that any residents west of Steeple Rock would use Ruby Hill to get out of the neighborhood, with the exception of Betty and maybe these residents right next to her. Again, this is just my opinion. There would be no reason for people living on Ruby Hill Drive to not just take their own road up to Windham Hill, in my opinion. But, of course, there are always exceptions. My point is, there would likely be very few cars turning onto Steeple Rock Drive past 9:30 p.m. on a Sunday night. That, of course, is just my opinion, but we do have cars activating Nate's cameras with their headlights just after the phone call between Nikki and Chris ends. That is what we are analyzing. We're trying to figure out, did they turn onto Steeple Rock Drive or did they park in front of the Watts home? Is everyone clear so far on what I have shown in regards to the neighborhood streets? I hope so, because we need to move on. As you can see, I made these visual aids, and again, they are just visuals. I'm purely speculating on this entire video because I would need to be physically there in the neighborhood to test this theory out for real, and that would only answer half of the question. Without Nikki's phone GPS, we can't be certain of her exact location at any time for a fact. This is a photo of Nate's security camera, and this is a photo of its trajectory. What it captures 24/7. While his camera runs 24/7, it is triggered by movement and light in order to begin recording. I've heard a lot of discrepancies on whether or not his camera was running 24/7 or only recording when activated, and the answer is both. It was on 24/7, but it only recorded when activated. That was how it was set to function. So he could visually see it if he pulled it up 24/7, but it only recorded when it was activated. Okay, I hope that makes some things a little bit more clear. Now, let's first look into the 2 times that Nate's camera caught lights during the phone call. The first time was at 9:37 p.m., just 9 minutes after the call began at 9:28 p.m., which I already said is doubtful to be Nikki just because of the short amount of time. I have looked at these routes at many different times throughout the day, and if she were speeding and there was no traffic, in my opinion, the soonest Nikki would be able to get to the Watts house from hers would be about 15 minutes. I suppose anything is possible. Plus, I did point out that within the same frame line, we can see this woman walking a boxer. The woman resembles Nikki, and Nikki had a boxer. From what I understand, and I could be wrong, which is why I say all the time, do your own research, but Nikki had a boxer. She brought him with her to her first interview with Mark. I said, I have a boxer, and before we had him, we had another boxer before him. There are photos of a boxer young, old, and then a new puppy, all allegedly Nikki's photos that were found in Chris Watts' secret calculator app. So I'm partially speculating here, but a lot of people love a certain breed of dog, and it's not uncommon for them to, after their dog passes, they get another dog of the same breed. But thinking about this logically, the timing sucks for this to be Nikki, unless someone else was using her phone at her home. Because I said her phone did register in Thornton at the time of that call. Now, we can talk burner phones later. Okay, I'm not gonna saturate this video with more than what it's supposed to be. At least I'm gonna try. Which brings us to the second time Nate's camera caught headlights during the phone call, which was at 9:45 p.m. This was 17 minutes after the call began. This makes it a bit more likely that it could have been Nikki. Let's look at the lights and duration from where the rays begin to where the rays of light end. Rays of light. I told you guys I'm not a professional, right? Just making sure. All right, let's get back to my visuals. These are supposed to show the light trajectory. That's better than rays, right? How far the headlights would reach from the intersection of Steeple Rock and Saratoga. I really wish we had the live of these, but oh well. Note the first image captured at 9:37 p.m. and the brightness of the headlights and how far they reach down Saratoga Trail. On this image, at 9:45 p.m., the headlights look to reach about the same as the 9:37 p.m. car. You can see that the headlights shine a bit closer to Nate's camera at 9:37 than at 9:45, but again, these are only stills, so it would depend on when the camera began recording. A car could have already made the left turn onto Steeple Rock or not yet have even been close enough to the intersection. Again, the live would help immensely here, but spilled milk, right? So in my visuals, this is kind of what I was trying to understand and share with you. Would the lights be an indicator of where this vehicle ended up? Keep in mind, the cars have brights too, or high beams, whatever you call them where you live. We call them brights here. I've heard other people call them high beams. Also, I didn't measure anything. These are just visual aids. So here's the car coming east on Saratoga Trail towards Steeple Rock Drive and the Watts home. As it gets closer, the lights have a closer trajectory towards the front of the Watts house, reaching in front of the Watts house, but not really much farther. As the car starts turning left onto Steeple Rock, the light's trajectory shifts a bit farther toward Nate's house, but then the lights would be gone after the turn was complete. So what do you think so far? Did it turn or did it park? Now, let's go to the most important image in my opinion, the one at 11:25 p.m. Now again, this was 6 minutes after the 111-minute phone call ended. You can clearly tell that the headlights are much brighter and have a farther trajectory than the prior two images. But like I already said, there is a lot to consider that I just don't have. Were there brights on any of these vehicles? Did any of the cars go straight past the Watts home? This is why I keep repeating myself that this is just me thinking out loud and sharing it with you to see what you think. Looking at my visuals, it would match up that it is quite possible that this car captured at 11:25 p.m. on August 12, 2018 did not turn left down Steeple Rock, that instead it parked in front of the Watts home. Looking at the coincidences of Nikki saying that towards the end of the phone call, she was wondering why he was not in bed yet. Did they have an argument about that? Was she upset that he was waiting up for Shanann in the shared bedroom? Then we have the coincidence of the phone call ending just before those lights were caught. I don't know how many times I've been on the phone with someone while on the way to their home, and then I end that call as I pull up or as I turn into the neighborhood. It is not impossible to think that this happened. The next phone ping from Nikki's phone being in Frederick is a coincidence. What else? I know there's more coincidences, but we need to move on with this video. Feel free to add any coincidences you have noticed in the comment section below. I want to be clear. There are many reasons that Nikki could have driven to Chris's house. The evidence shows that Nikki had a hold on Chris. I don't even know anymore if Nikki even loved him or was in love with him, but she seemed to have a lot of information about the Watts family that was none of her business. When she spoke about Chris, she spoke as though she was the one who called all the shots. Looking further back, we know that Nikki searched Shanann and Chris before she even worked at Anadarko. So, I don't know, that seems a bit obsessive. I can only assume that this alleged obsession only grew over time. And that's all I'm going to say about that for now. So what do you guys think about these images and whether or not these headlights help us decide if someone parked outside of the Watts home? Is it possible? Yes, it damn sure is, in my opinion. But what about the possibility that that car was Nikki? Of course, it is all speculation, but it does create another coincidence that we can add to the list. I'm going to end this video now and get back to the timeline. As soon as we are done with that timeline, we can begin looking at other things more in depth. The timeline, oh my gosh, took so much longer than planned and I'm still not done with it. But I can't stress this enough. It's going to be very important because when we talk about other things, we're going to be able to go back and refer to the timeline that I already gave. So I won't have to explain myself every video moving forward. And that's going to help. You can always go back and check the video. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, your week, your weekend. Please be safe, be happy, be healthy, and most of all, be unapologetically you. Bye-bye.